Today is Wednesday, July 23rd. We'll tell you how the Justice Department is hoping to learn more information about the Jeffrey Epstein case, and why the House is leaving the Capitol early in the face of scrutiny over the Epstein files. Also, new trade announcements, including a deal with one of America's biggest economic partners. Plus, what's behind a top FEMA official's decision to leave the agency, how the music world is paying tribute to a legendary rock star, and which companies are seeing a big boom as part of the latest meme stock craze. Those stories and even more news coming up. Welcome to The Newsworthy. All the day's news in about 10 minutes. Fast, fair, fun, and on the go. I'm Lacey Evans, filling in for Erica Mandy today. Thanks so much for being here. You ready? Let's do this. The unseen evidence from the Jeffrey Epstein investigation has caused a big rift in Congress, so much so that House Speaker Mike Johnson cut this week's session short and adjourned for summer break early. It came just as Democrats and some GOP members demanded votes to release more material related to the convicted sex offender. But Johnson said, quote, "We are not going to let them use this as a political battering ram." With that, Congress members are going back to their home districts, meaning another vote won't happen until at least September. Still, constituents are expected to keep pressuring their representatives to make all the case files public. Since the Justice Department effectively closed the case and decided not to release more documents, polls have shown most Americans believe the government is hiding something. Now, it seems it's not case closed after all. The DOJ said yesterday it wants to interview Epstein's longtime associate Ghislaine Maxwell, who's now in prison for sex trafficking. To that, her lawyer wrote on X, quote, "We are in discussions with the government, and Ghislaine will always testify truthfully." And yesterday, judges who presided over the Epstein cases have said they're considering releasing grand jury transcripts as the Trump administration has requested. But before they decide, they've asked for more information from the government, Maxwell, and Epstein's victims. To be continued. While many lawmakers are focused on Jeffrey Epstein, President Trump is still focused on former President Obama. In the Oval Office yesterday, he accused Obama of treason, saying the former president led an effort to tie him to Russia and undermine his 2016 presidential campaign. That actually got a rare response from Obama's spokesperson, who called the allegations bizarre and a weak attempt at distraction. He explained further, saying, quote, "Our office does not normally dignify the constant nonsense and misinformation flowing out of the White House with a response, but these claims are outrageous enough to merit one." He pointed out that the intelligence community widely accepted the conclusion that Russia did work to influence the 2016 election, but wasn't able to successfully manipulate any votes. And the Republican-led Senate Intelligence Committee backed up those findings in 2020. Still, Trump says action will be taken against Obama and his former officials for, quote, "trying to lead a coup." He hasn't released any evidence yet, but said his administration has thousands of documents coming. And the president is encouraging the DOJ to start a criminal investigation. Once again, the U.S. is leaving the United Nations Cultural Agency, UNESCO. The agency is known for preserving cultural heritage and empowering education and science worldwide. It also recognizes certain landmarks for protection, ranging from Egypt's Pyramids of Giza to America's Grand Canyon National Park. But the Trump administration says American involvement isn't of national interest. The White House accuses the agency of supporting woke, divisive causes and promoting anti-Israel speech. Since Trump has returned to office, this is the third UN agency his administration has withdrawn from, after already leaving the World Health Organization and Human Rights Council. A U.S. government employee is now being kept in China. He works at the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office, but he traveled to China for personal reasons to visit family. Well, the Washington Post reports the issue is the American didn't disclose on his visa application that he worked for the U.S. government. And the New York Times says he has been interrogated by Chinese intelligence officers about his past service in the U.S. military. The exit ban was also imposed on a Wells Fargo banker who was in China for business. The Chinese government says she has to stay to help with a criminal investigation without getting into specifics. Human rights groups say exit bans have become increasingly common in China for both Chinese and foreign nationals. They can last for months or even years. So the U.S. Embassy says it's working with Chinese officials now to resolve the situation. President Trump announced another big trade deal this week. In fact, Trump called it, quote, perhaps the largest deal ever made. He says Japan will be paying an extra 15% on the country's exports to the U.S. Plus, Japan will apparently invest $550 billion in the U.S., and Trump says the U.S. will receive 90% of the profits. Japan considers it a good deal, too, because right now, auto tariffs stand at 25%. So, even though 15% is higher than what it was previously, at this point, it's a relief, since auto exports to the U.S. are a cornerstone of Japan's economy. Also yesterday, Trump announced a trade deal with the Philippines and gave more specifics on the deal reached with Indonesia, saying both countries will pay a 19% tariff on imports to the U.S., and American exports will generally not face tariffs. Next up, President Trump says a deal with Europe will be announced soon. More news is still coming up, but first, Erica wants to thank our sponsor, BetterHelp.
It's vacation time for me, and while taking time away from work is great for a little relaxation and break, it's not really a long-term solution for anyone experiencing workplace stress. Instead, avoiding burnout is usually about the small daily stuff, making time for exercise, for example, or just getting outside during the day, or perhaps learning how to set better boundaries in a way that works for you and your workplace. When I'm extra stressed, therapy is key. It helps me figure out why I'm feeling a certain way and then what I can actually do about it. It helps me be my best self, both at work and at home. And we all know each of those impact the other. If you're interested in giving therapy a try, BetterHelp is convenient, it's all online, and you can switch therapists at any time. As the largest online therapy provider in the world, BetterHelp can provide access to mental health professionals with a diverse variety of expertise. Unwind from work with BetterHelp. Our listeners get 10% off the first month at betterhelp.com/newsworthy. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/newsworthy.
Now, back to the news. There's a new class of meme stocks making a rally on Wall Street. And once again, they're being driven by chatter on Reddit's forum called Wall Street Bets. This time, individual traders are mostly rallying around department store Kohl's and the online real estate company Opendoor. Both companies have been struggling and haven't made any big announcements, but have still seen their shares skyrocket. And overall trading yesterday morning was almost 17 times higher than the average over the last month. It's all reminiscent of the frenzy around GameStop and AMC Entertainment a few years ago, especially with Kohl's, since it's a nostalgic brand that short sellers have been betting against. Other heavily shorted names that have been attracting individual buyers recently include Campbell's, Carter's, and GoPro. The head of FEMA's search and rescue unit has decided to step down as the U.S. approaches peak disaster season. Ken Pagurik explained, saying the Trump administration has caused chaos at the agency and that it hurt the response to deadly flooding in Texas. Last month, Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem issued a rule that says every funding request over $100,000 needs to have her personal sign-off. Well, Pagurik says that kind of bureaucratic red tape caused delays that pushed him to resign. In response, the Homeland Security Department said it was laughable that a public employee would choose to quit over this issue, and that, quote, "we're being responsible with taxpayer dollars. That's our job." President Trump has floated the idea of dismantling FEMA altogether and leaving disaster response up to the states instead. For now, a task force is still reviewing FEMA's protocols and is expected to recommend changes. The world is saying goodbye to a heavy metal legend who was fondly referred to as the Prince of Darkness. Ozzy Osbourne died at 76 years old after a years-long struggle with Parkinson's disease and other ailments. His band, Black Sabbath, performed its last show just 2 weeks ago in a festival billed as the band's last concert. Black Sabbath helped define the metal genre, thanks in large part to Osbourne's vocals. Later, Osbourne launched a solo career, for which he won 5 Grammy Awards. He also gained notoriety for his heavy metal persona and antics. And in the early 2000s, Osbourne found a whole new audience when he starred alongside his family in an MTV reality series. Since word came out about his death, tributes have been coming in from all around the world. Elton John called Osbourne a huge trailblazer who secured his place in the pantheon of rock gods. Others who honored Osbourne yesterday include Billy Idol, Pearl Jam, Ice-T, John Bon Jovi, Jack White, and Flava Flav. Transgender athletes are no longer able to compete on Team USA in women's Olympic sports. The U.S. Olympic and Paralympic Committee made the announcement yesterday, complying with an executive order President Trump signed earlier this year. Before this, each sport could set its own policy when it came to trans athletes. But as you know, this has been a highly contentious debate. On the one side, there's people like Trump who say it's not fair or safe for girls and women who were born female to have to compete against transgender athletes. But LGBTQ advocates say trans athletes deserve the same opportunities as others. And in the past, the U.S. Olympic and Paralympic Committee has said it would only, quote, rely on real data and science-based evidence rather than ideology. Trump has also banned transgender athletes from competing on women's and girls' sports teams at both K-12 schools and colleges. And he said he'll keep transgender athletes from getting visas for the 2028 Olympics in Los Angeles. Tennis star Venus Williams made an epic comeback this week. She won her first singles match in 2 years at the DC Open. At 45 years old, that made Williams the second oldest woman to ever win a tour-level singles match in pro tennis, just behind Martina Navratilova. Williams beat a 22-year-old competitor who wasn't even born when she won her fourth major at the U.S. Open, and it's especially impressive considering Williams went into the tournament as a wild card, having not played on the WTA Tour at all in over a year. USA Today called it arguably the most stunning result of the year in any sport. And that's it for the main news today, but it's now time for Work Wednesday, when we break down one interesting career or work-related news story every Wednesday. But first, this episode is sponsored by Trade Coffee.
Between summer activities, work, and time away on vacation, my routine can be a little all over the place. But anytime I'm home, my cold brew ritual is something I never skip, thanks to Trade. Their cold brew beans are smooth and easy to prep. I can brew ahead for the week or fill my tumbler to take on the go. And yes, I can just skip deliveries for when I'm away. But you better believe I'm excited to return to that great cold brew coffee as soon as I get home. Thanks to Trade, it's easier, costs less, and dare I say, even tastes better than buying cold brew at a coffee shop or using a concentrate. And it's so easy. Even my 4-year-old actually had fun helping me make our latest batch. And while he can't drink it himself for obvious reasons, he wanted to know how it tasted, and it was an immediate 2 thumbs up from me. For a limited time, Trade is giving 50% off a month of cold brew. That's around 60 cups of cold brew for 50% off when you go to drinktrade.com/newsworthy. You've got to try it. Go to drinktrade.com/newsworthy to get 50% off 1 month of cold brew. drinktrade.com/newsworthy.
Okay, now back to Work Wednesday. If you feel hesitant to take time off from work, you're not alone. More than half of American workers say they feel some kind of anxiety about taking all the paid time off they're entitled to, and a third say they've actually been pressured not to use all of their PTO. That's according to a poll of more than 1,000 workers by the job service provider LiveCareer. The Pew Research Center did a similar poll back in 2023 and came back with almost the same findings. Some of the reasons workers stated include worrying about falling behind at work, burdening their coworkers, hurting their chances for advancement, or even losing their jobs. But career experts say companies should address the barriers that keep people from stepping away, since time off could prevent burnout and actually boost productivity. Plus, it could make a worker value their job more and want to stay at the company. So how can a boss encourage employees to take their breaks? Those surveyed had some suggestions. For example, more coverage for their work while they're out, supportive managers, clearer company policies, and more. Thank you so much for listening. We'll be back tomorrow with all the biggest news of the day. Until then, have a great day.